Hi, everyone, and welcome to day 35 of What on Earth Am I Here For? And today I started writing down my thoughts before recording it. So, yay! It's going to be a lot more prepared. We are going to be talking about God's power in your weakness. Pastor Rick starts up the chapter by saying God loves to use weak people, and of course, I agree. Everyone has a weakness, and actually, we have more than just one. We have a bundle of flaws and imperfections: emotional, physical, intellectual, spiritual, you name it, we've got it. These are, well, Pastor Rick describes weaknesses as uncontrollable circumstances that make us weak, and sometimes we defend it, we make excuses for it, we try to hide it, and we resent our weaknesses. But all of that denial and hiding actually prevents God from using us the way He wants to. So He says, or God says, my thoughts and my ways are higher than yours. God chose the foolish things of the world to shame the strong. He chose the lowly things of the world and the despised things and the things that are not, to nullify the things that are, so that no one may boast before Him. What does this mean? Actually, notice with the phrase that I said, God chose the foolish things. And what is foolish? The Bible's most pertinent insult is to be a fool. A fool in the Bible is a person who doesn't know right and wrong. It is not being dumb, but it is not knowing the right way. It's also the source of all the maladies, but I don't have it right now. But if you look at Proverbs, a lot of the bad things happen to fools. Fools get into trouble, fools pay the price, etc., etc., because fools sin, and the bad things that happen to fools is a consequence of their sin. Yet God chose fools. Remember when I told you that there were two kinds of people, the ones He chose and the ones He calls? Now, the ones He chose are the fools. In fact, in Isaiah, He says, eunuch, you have a place in my house as long as you serve me. I guess that would be like an equivalent of, in the olden days, eunuchs were not allowed into God's house. Anyone with broken balls or, private parts, or anything that made them imperfect was not allowed in God's house. And now He calls them to a place greater than sons and daughters, into His house. And foreigners were not even allowed inside, only Israelites could come in. But in Isaiah 54, He says, come, foreigners, I will give you a place. And He calls them even more. And then He says, I will gather still more from those that I've already gathered. So can you imagine? He's actually picking the weakest, the most unlikely ones to represent Himself, to be the ones He has chosen. And everybody else He calls, so that no one can boast and say, oh, I'm perfect because I'm Israelite, I'm this, and I'm perfect in law. No, He calls the fools. David was a murderer and an adulterer. Noah was a reckless drunk at least once. Lot had sex with his daughters. And a lot of the Israelites are a result of this. Rahab was a prostitute. And Jesus honestly liked to drink wine. He did. And that's part of the things He defended, because He was with the sinners and they were drinking. So I just want to say, I always call to mind people who are sinned. And that is because I want them not to sin. But it gets reflected into that I don't love them or I hate them, I think less of them. No, I love them equally. I love every person equally, but I do not want them to sin. And I need to call out their sins in order for them to be saved. And it's only through that I show my love. Just like a parent who tells their son, don't play with fire or don't play with matches, and you have to get mad. And the son might think, oh, my dad hates me. He got mad at me. He screamed at me. Well, you don't have to get mad for one, but you do have to establish that there is a wrong behavior and there is a right, in order for you to not be a fool, in order for your son to know growing up which path is the right one and which path is the wrong one. But nowadays, God has written His law in our hearts, and we are supposed to know. Naturally, we already know this feels wrong. But sometimes people don't listen to their hearts, and that's when their weakness becomes a continual sin. And if society tells them it's okay to sin continuously, it's okay to keep on having sex with different people, it's okay to be a homosexual all your life, it's okay to do all these things. So it becomes okay to sin continually, to grieve your spirit continually, to keep on walking in sin so that nobody walks to the right path. And that is the sickness of today's culture. We need to take a stand. If you want to take a stand, please message me, because there is a special program that we have for people who feel they have a heart to serve, to spread what is good, what is right, what is true. And remember the promise of God, those who lead many to righteousness shall shine like the heavens. And that is with a reward, okay? But anyway, I'm just saying, all your weakness, especially sin, is correctable, and it is not part of you. It is completely separate from your perfection. And if somebody tells you, please don't sin, please don't do this, don't take it as don't take it against you, literally. It is against your sin, but it is for you, in love for you. Because I love you, I correct you. If I don't love you, I don't care what you do, right? You might go fall in a ditch, I don't care. But because I love you, I tell you, hey, watch out. There's a ditch, right? So for Pastor Rick, so please, for anyone that's been chastised by me, please know that it is from a place of love, and it is a place of wisdom, that those who know what is right and wrong must guide those who turn a blind eye to it. Okay, it is your responsibility as a kingdom builder. We build each other up towards what is good, towards what is true, even if we are all fools. I am a fool in my certain way. I have my sins, and those sins are mine to bear and mine to overcome. But because I have friends who tell me, don't do that, it's wrong, they help me overcome my sins. And when I have friends, I help them overcome their sins as well, right? So for Pastor Rick, some of the limitations that he defines as weaknesses are those that you cannot control. An example is an emotional limitation, or a trauma, or a hurtful memory, or a personality quirk, or a hereditary disposition that we can't help. And what he says is, in spite of this, we are like clay jars in which treasure is stored. But the power is in what we store inside. The Spirit of God inside us is the power, so that it doesn't matter if we have weaknesses. And it's true, I have to agree, because when you act in goodness, even if you are weak, I have my sins, but I will still try to help you. I have my faults, but I will still try to do what's best in every moment. And that's enough, because God looks at the heart, what you're trying to do. And Pastor Rick says, And one step to help God use us is to admit our weaknesses. Personally, being a God lover has forced me more times than I can count to say, "Okay, God, I'm not in control. Okay, God, I messed up. I'm sorry. Please help me." And every time, God was there and everything worked out well. God displays his power in your weakness. Psalm 58 says, "The righteous will be glad when they are avenged, when they bathe their feet in the blood of the wicked. Then men will say, 'Surely the righteous are rewarded. Surely there is a God who judges the earth.'" Now, I have never wished ill upon anyone, and I think this is one of the reasons why God protects me so much. In fact, when I was on the mountains and the Psalms were reading out my thoughts, which means like I think it, and then when I look down at the Bible, it's right there. Everything that I think is right there. And then suddenly it said, "Bring down my enemies," or something to that effect. I'm sorry, I can't give you the exact psalm right now. And I said, "No, God, don't. Because I just want to be at peace. You just heal me and let them go." Then the next lines on the Psalms were, "God tests the thoughts of his devoted." And he said, "The righteous will be blessed," or something to this effect, and "the pure of heart," etc., etc. So even then, God is testing you, which is what I want to tell you. Even if you have your weaknesses, your troubles, your limitations, your trauma, it is no excuse to do wrong. It is no excuse to think badly of anybody else, because that weakness or that trauma is somebody else's sin and that you are paying for. It's not fair, but it is a sacrifice that you can take on with strength, because God is with you and because you are pure. And when you do this and when you take it on and you don't do anything bad, you actually purify the world in a way. You build the kingdom of goodness because you yourself do not pass on the evil and you do not pass on the bad. Okay? And if that person happens to get bad things happen to them, that's God's thing. That's why vengeance is his, not yours. It's his. Okay? And when you have your weakness, you just try to do your best. I'm taking it really far. I know weaknesses can just mean, like a lisp or a quirk that you have, which, of course, with those small things, love yourself, accept yourself. There is a reason for that. You are so perfect. You are enough. You are loved beyond anything that you know. You are already so loved. So, lisp or not, just rejoice and be happy and keep doing good, right? Because that's the difficult part. That's the challenge. When you face great opposition and you really don't know what to do, trust in God, the God who loves you. Because trusting in him and knowing that he loves you are two steady legs of faith. So that's what pushes you on to have faith, because you trust in God and you know that he loves you and you know who he is. So then you have your love for God, which keeps you faithful and in check. And the last one is your humility, to know that you're flawed and human, erring and foolish. And you have 4 pillars. So what are these? These are trusting in God because you know who he is, loving God, and then knowing that God loves you. That's the third. And the fourth is your humility in your own frailty. When you have these 4 things, you will have the faith to move mountains. You will have the faith to serve God 100,000%. Pastor Rick says humility is not putting your strengths down or denying your strengths, but rather being honest about your weaknesses. And God gives grace to the humble. When we honestly share our weaknesses, we become closer to those we share them to. We also open ourselves up to trusting others and being trusted by them as well. It's better to be honest than pretend to be perfect. Like, I've had so many mistakes, so many. But Pastor Rick tells us to be content with our weaknesses. Paul even boasts about his weaknesses so that the power of Christ can work through him. Since you know it's all for Christ's good, be content with your weaknesses. So what does this mean? No matter how great we are, know that you're just a vessel, and we do all things for God and by God's power and might. So the vessel may be glorified, but it is still God's glory. It is His just working through you. And that's how you keep humble, because no matter how many acclaims you get, how many etc., validating awards or such, or accomplishments, it's God's. It is God's. You are the vessel, and you are God's. And the fact that you are God's is what you should be proud of, because you belong to the best thing ever, the most glorious, amazing thing ever. Pastor Rick says that we have to keep our weaknesses in mind so that we might not be arrogant. I agree to a point, but I think arrogance stems from a belief that you are better than someone else because of something that you did or what. It's not right. That belief is wrong. Although knowing that you still poop humbles you, I think it's better to just always know that we as a human race always stand on equal footing. And if we can remember this, we can love and accept our weaknesses as well as others. We can accept our good traits and not have it affect the standing we put on ourselves against others. Because there is no standing. We are all on flat, solid, equal ground. We are all children of God. We are all loved. And though our talents may be different, our social status, our number of friends may be different, we are still all equal children of God. So we as a people are bound by one destiny, and we are in this together. A lot of people forget this fact. Christian Vance Havner quipped, Christians, like snowflakes, are frail, but when they stick together, they can stop traffic. We also, as a people, have to be more aware of the direction we are taking society and what we hold dear and how we take care of our planet, and how we place value on God and all the universal principles of justice and love in society. So these are the things that a society and a culture must consciously be aware of and must consciously bring up to create lasting positive change. Too few of us are acting on this consciously. Before, parents knew what to instill in their children, how to value honesty and respect and all this. But now, they're just letting their kids run amok, and that's wrong. This is why they grow up without rules. They grow up without an idea of what is right and wrong. They grow up as fools. We have a duty to teach, to guide, to uphold what is good and true and right. So this is why Yeshue Lay Apostolic Ministry is starting Project Good Fire. And if you want to be able to influence media in a positive way, please come join us, message us, because we're going to do powerful and amazing things in media. And we're going to fight back. Pastor Rick also says that weakness increases our sympathy for others. This is true, I guess, because we feel the closest to those whose pain is like ours. Therefore, maybe when we know our weaknesses all too well, we can more powerfully bond with others. But for me, though, beyond weakness and strength, there is this intrinsic bond we already share with all humanity. Again, I'm going to repeat it, that we at our core are bearers of one spirit, the breath of God, and we are all children of God. And when we know our place as brothers and sisters, when this oneness is primary in our consciousness, our weaknesses and our differences, our strengths and status are all minor details to the brotherhood that we share. So Moses killed a man and broke the 10 commandments, yet he led so many people and was God's face-to-face friend. Gideon had low self-esteem and insecurities and was transformed to a mighty man of valor. And Samson was selfish and hedonistic, but at the very end, he became noble and self-effacing. So the lesson here is that even through weakness, we can do great and good things. And that is what's most important. And that is what God always calls us to do. He enables us with His own strength and with faith in Him to face insurmountable circumstances in battle. We move in faith not because we are strong, but because our faith is strong in a God who is absolutely strong. Thinking about my purpose, God works best when I admit my weakness. My grace is sufficient for you. My power is made perfect in weakness. Am I limiting God's power in my life by trying to hide my weaknesses? What do I need to be honest about in order to help others? God bless you, and I love you.